Sometimes topwater fishing requires a more subtle approach, and the quiet little retrieve of Lake Lunkers Floppin Frog does just that. So let's break down this finesse topwater technique, starting with rigging. My favorite way to rig this bait up is Texas rigged with a 2 to 3/0 belly weighted twist lock hook. I twist the head of the bait onto the hook, then I rig it up weedless. And the last thing, I make sure to break the little legs free so that those can kick up and down and make a little gurgling sound as you're retrieving it. There we go. Just had that nice little bubble trail, guys. That little sputter, sputter, sputter. And that fish perfectly timed that. As we got this little bait kicking through the water, it's just making that little, and it's real subtle. But trust me, these fish, they're up, they're waiting to ambush. That's exactly what they're waiting to hear. They're listening, and as that bait gets close, they line themselves up, and when it comes over their head, wham! And this bait, because it's nice and weedless, you can throw it just over these tules, over these different weed patches. You got all this little stick-up brush and stuff. Okay, for the gear, you can either use a bait casting or a spinning outfit. I like either 8 to 12, maybe 15-pound line. The lighter line on the spinning rod, heavier line on the bait casting rod, and then it comes down to the rod. I like a rod that's got enough, it's got a soft enough tip so I can really fire this bait out. A softer rod will allow that lighter bait to load up a little bit, I'll get more bend in that rod and fling that bait a lot farther distance. Then I also want that soft rod tip, so when that bait comes up and smashes that bait, when I drop down the rod, give it a second to actually turn on that bait. Also, there's gonna be a little give in that rod, so it's not pulling that bait out of the fish's mouth. That fish turns and you're gonna get a good hook set. The retrieval of this thing is super simple. Make as long a cast as you can and retrieve the bait back to the boat with your rod tip up. The idea is to keep this bait on the surface while making a quiet little gurgling sound. As those feet kick, they're gonna make a little, and that's what brings these fish in and triggers the strikes. You can also play around with different speeds of retrieve throughout one retrieve. You can speed it up and then slow down a little bit, speed it up, slow down, and that can also elicit some strikes. One little trick you can do is let the bait sink every once in a while. So as I bring over the edge of the weeds, right when I come over that edge or I come over a little hole in the weeds, I can just let that bait stop. And what it'll do is it'll slowly sink down a little bit and it'll give that fish a second to come out and whack it. If I don't get bit within a second, 2 seconds, then I lift that rod tip back up and keep reeling. Once I get bit, watch what I do. I'm not gonna set the hook right away. Moving this bait along. Drop my rod tip, now set. All right, now what I did, you guys see how I dropped my rod tip? That fish comes up and whacks it, right? Well, it's hot, that fish is exploding out of the water, coming at you because that bait's coming at you. And so when you drop that rod tip, that allows that fish to turn. That fish hits it on the run. And when you drop that rod tip, that fish turns down now because he came up to eat it. Now he's gonna turn down and swallow that bait. So that's when you that's when you give it that second. And then when you set the hook, you're now setting against that fish and you're gonna get a good hook set right in the top of that mouth. This bait excels over vegetation and in shallow water. Anytime you have grass growing all the way up to the surface, you're gonna have bass waiting just below, waiting to ambush prey. This bait perfectly mimics little bait fish scurrying along and is an enticing target for bass. My favorite situations are in areas with sparse grass clumps. I fan cast the area and can cover water really quickly. Most topwater baits are big, bulky, and make a lot of commotion. But for those times, those bass are up shallow and they want a quieter, more subtle approach, the Lake Lunkers Floppin Frog is the perfect solution. So make sure you guys add this to your arsenal and take advantage of this technique. Once again, guys, I'm Travis with Lucky Tackle Box. If you enjoyed the video, throw us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below.